תורגמו למצבים שבהם אני נותן. והם מקבלים.
Can I ask somebody who's ever doing that to be on mute? Thanks very much. All right, well, thank you all for attending today. Today is our first, I guess, official event, a public event on the California Statewide Gas Emerging Technologies program. We did have an event earlier, I still can't remember if it was earlier this year or late last year. I think it was late last year. That was a stakeholder presentation about the time the program was just being launched. I don't know, there may be a number of people on the call today that have attended that and may have heard some of this background, but we do want to start today, and I'll go over the agenda now. Start today with an overview of the program, just to get everybody on the same page as to what the Statewide Gas Emerging Technologies program is all about. So apologize in advance if people have, some of the people on the line have heard that before, but we'll go through that relatively quickly because there is a lot of public information out there on the CAEC website and others where there is that initial stakeholder presentation, implementation plan, and others. So other information. So you can always go to that site to look for that information and read more in depth. So I won't go an in-depth presentation of the program, but just a high-level summary of that. The main point of today is to look into the activities that we're into this year in terms of some of the research projects. So we'll spend most of the session going over the research plan that is in effect for this year, and as well as an update on the number of projects that we're working on this year so far. And then we'll go into a Q&A, and then then we'll end the session at that point. So again, anybody that's just joined, make sure that we keep ourselves on mute as much as possible, just so we can make it easier for the presenters today. And we'll take Q&A at the end of the session, so we won't be doing any questions during the presentation. We'll try and get through that, and then we can go back and circle back with any other questions on some of the things that we discussed today. So I do want to take this opportunity to introduce today's speakers. Again, my name is Paul Kylo. I'm with ICF. I am the overall program director here in Southern California, overseeing the work that we're doing on the GET program. I will be covering the first little intro bit of the slides, and then I'll be handing it over to my colleague, Stephen Long. Stephen, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Stephen Long. I'm director at ICF, and as Paul indicated, I will go over the research portion of the work. I've been overseeing the project activities at a higher level and relative to the program's goals, and we'll go through a little bit of that as we step through the presentation.
And then Crystal.
Hi, everyone. I'm Crystal Malian. I work at Linkus Inc. I am one of the project managers over there working on these projects we're going to talk to you about today. I have about 10 years of experience in the energy efficiency industry in a bunch of various different areas, but I did work on electric ET before as a consultant for Edison, and now I'm over on the gas side. So I'm excited to be over here working with this team.
Sabrish.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Shabrish with Linkus. Linkus is a sub-consultant to ICF on this contract. We are supporting ICF on various fronts on this contract, as you will see later in the slides. I'm a project manager for one of the projects that we have undertaken. I have been with Linkus since 2007, and I'm excited to be supporting this project. Thank you.
Thanks. Saurabh.
Good morning, everyone. This is Saurabh Shekhar, and I'm working as energy engineer for one of the projects on this emerging technologies program. And I've been working with ICF for about a year now.
Okay, thanks. And finally, Anushka.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anushka Cholakat, and I'm an energy engineer here at ICF, and I recently joined about 2 months ago to support the GET program.
Great, thank you, everybody. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to go over a brief program overview. So again, get everybody on the same page and understanding of what the Gas Emerging Technologies Program is all about. So this is a statewide effort jointly funded by the 3 gas IOUs here in California to research and new gas technologies, not just necessarily new technologies, but also underutilized technologies that may be existing, maybe technologies that are in their portfolio today but are not well understood or well utilized. So that's all part of our prioritization process that we go through, is to identify the right opportunities to research for this program. This is a 3-year program, essentially from 2022 through 2024. As I mentioned earlier, it began really in late 2021 with some of the initial startup activities and getting the project underway. But for the most part, it's been pretty much operational since probably the spring of 2022. As I mentioned, the purpose is to identify those newer technologies or unutilized technologies. There's a scanning and prioritization process that we go through to help channel our efforts on what we want to look at. Generally, we look at stuff that are in the either, as I mentioned, available today or available in the next 3 to 5 years, but stuff that's in the kind of the short duration of being adopted by the utility program portfolios, and so they can offer energy incentives for those, for energy efficiency incentives, and claim savings through their resource program portfolio. So very similar, I think this is, people that have been involved with the emerging technology space here in California for a while. This is probably not a whole lot new. Just basically as we go through the program process, we have to, scan and screen the right technologies, prioritize our efforts around those technologies, then evaluate those technologies. I think maybe a little bit more of within the scope of this, maybe than in prior efforts around emerging technologies. We spend a little bit more time on the back end of dissemination and technology transfer, because again, the main goal of the program is, or one of the main goals of the program is really to make sure these technologies are transferred in the portfolio so we can start seeing some results through the resource programs. It's not just about researching projects and technologies and putting a report on a shelf somewhere. We really want to make sure we move technologies into the program portfolios and actually start to achieve some results through those. So you can see here at a high level the goals of the program over the span of these 3 years. There's a total goal of to do 31 projects, technology research projects. We have a goal of 8 in 2022, 14 next year, and then 9 in 2024. So next year is going to be a lot of activity in comparison to the first or the last years as we start to wind down the activity in 2024. We also have these technology-focused pilots that we're doing. So we want to initiate one of those this year, and we're in the discussions about that today, or not today on this call, but at this time to move and start one of these technology-focused pilots this year. These are longer-term efforts generally. So we want to get that underway as soon as we can in 2022, because it'll probably take the better part of 2023 and into 2024 to get results from that pilot. So a grand total between just the individual technologies and technology-focused pilot is to do 32 research projects essentially over the 3-year period. As during the introductions, as you saw, we have people talking today from ICF, myself, Stephen, Saurabh, and Anushka. And we are the overall prime contractor for SoCalGas on this work. We have a number of subs. Sabrish and Crystal will be talking today from Linkus, and they are working on some of these projects, initial projects that we have started. We have 2 other subs who are not speaking today, but they're an active part of this program as well. We have NREL, who will be leading a lot of the lab research that we're doing, and we're in the talks now about some of those initial technologies that will be going into that phase of the research. So hopefully by the next time we meet and have one of these events, we'll have some more conversation and more participation from the folks at NREL on some of those activities. We also have another subcontractor in Energy Resources Integration, ERI, who is working on a couple of initial concepts that we have to push through and propose to SoCalGas and that have come through the prioritization process. We're just now in the process of putting that together, and we'll hopefully get those in front of SoCalGas relatively soon. And again, by the next time we meet here and give an update on some of the projects, we'll have them give them an opportunity to present on the projects that they are working on at that time. If we can make sure again that we're on mute. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Stephen.
So this is Stephen, and I'm going to go through the research plan. This is sort of the guidance for the program that Paul alluded to. So prior to or at the beginning of the startup, we came up with this guidance document. I'm going to walk through the 4 goals that make up this document and explain a little bit more. Following this, we're going to actually go through some of the project summaries that you'll be able to reference back to this plan because in essence, we're trying to make sure that the projects reflect the goals of this plan. And the way the goals were set, or at least what they reflect, is sort of those potential and activities that would best support the programs and the introduction of new technologies. So as you might be aware of, gas heating are 2 of the largest potentials within the state of California. And so as a result, we're doing a lot of activity in those areas. So the first goal is to characterize the market for efficient water heating and space heating in res and commercial buildings. So this is primarily to look at the market and develop a technology map as it applies. Now we've got an existing technology map. It's the technology priority map. It's been used, I believe, by the IOUs, and it's being used with the CalNext program as well. In essence, what it does is it outlines those activities that are going on within the field. And within that, we sort of document those activities that we need to be focused on. So that's part of this activity, both sort of in this plan and also as an output from the work we're doing that supports the plan. And we're getting input, from stakeholders, including our technical advisory group that represents, for several different organizations that have knowledge in this space. So the research activities we're focused on right now for this first goal is to catalog existing activities and research results that are in this field. And there is, actually quite a bit of activity both in the technologies and, some of the controls and the applying this equipment throughout those sectors. We're also looking forward to additional research that we will start later this year and or next year. They'll be able to fill in the gaps of what has actually been done by other organizations. And then we're going to be prioritizing both the current commercial or near commercial technologies, along with those others that are still in project development and prototyping. So as part of that second, that discussion above is sort of the second goal, which is to select the water heating and space heating technologies for testing and monitoring. So as Paul alluded to, we're going to be doing a technology-focused pilot. And so we're going to scope out and be doing both lab and field testing on new water heating technology. So this aligns with this goal. So right now the process has been, and this will be discussed in a couple minutes, is to look at existing data and looking for what's needed within the portfolio, develop project plans. And then we're also, of course, trying to look several years down the pipeline to understand what is being developed and when it might be commercially ready to be integrated into the gas efficiency programs. So right now, or within the near future, we'll be testing those technologies that are market ready. But we'll need support from this program to get them so that they're program ready. And as I alluded to, we are in the process of prioritizing those technologies that we'll be testing later this year and or next year. So you can go to the third goal. So the third goal is focused on commercial, primarily commercial food service, although residential is also part of this discussion. This is another large potential for gas cooking needs. And so we're trying to identify the market barriers as with the water heating and the space heating. We're going to look into doing field studies and demonstration projects, and also look into the potential for high efficiency and low emissions burners that would meet current and potentially future requirements. So right now what's going on is understanding the barriers of market penetration and looking at those technologies that we can support and once again help get them into the program portfolios. And there's been a lot of discussion on burner design, a lot of fundamental R&D on burner designs, and that will also be looked at. And then we're also going to potentially look into heat recovery and heat transfer applications, probably a space that is potentially further out. And I'm mentioning to you what's in the current research plan. We will be reassessing this and updating it for 2023. And I believe it's the subject of our next outreach meeting. And then the last goal is related to improving product and operational efficiencies of industrial and ag processes. So we're looking at technologies and controls that provide off-the-shelf solution for small industrial and ag. So one of our projects is actually looking at the add-on types of controls that might actually fulfill this need, and hopefully add in some other options for the programs, and potentially identifying some best practices for these as well. Once again, looking at market barriers for adoption of the equipment in this space, understanding why the potential for heat recovery is not being realized as much in the US and California. And then also looking at potentially the gas heat pump water heaters and barriers in this space as well for process heat and or process hot water. So activities, as I'm alluding to, we're looking at
8780.
We're looking at barriers in this space as well to help understand how we can best mitigate those through for program implementation, and then also looking at potential non-energy impacts and emissions. So some of the interesting work that we're seeing is the work to help reduce not only actual energy use and the related CO2, but also NOx and SOx as well. So that's, you can move to the next slide. So I will briefly note which projects that are being done. We've got 5 current projects that are underway, and I will let each of the project managers go through and explain the projects as well as the sort of the status of those projects. So Crystal, if you'd like to go through water heating analysis project.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So as Stephen already alluded to, water heating is the end use with the most gas usage in California, and it cuts across multiple segments. So we decided to start looking at that first. We did a brief high-level analysis of installed water heating measures using CEDARS data, and it looked like there was a gap between the actual adoption and the potential, which indicated to us that there were some significant barriers. So our first project here was to research water heating adoption trends in EE programs, do some market research about drivers and barriers for the high efficiency water heating technologies, and provide some recommendations to improve adoption. We kicked off this project in May of this year, and we expect it to be finished by the end of this year with a final report. The expected outcomes of the project were to do deeper research on water heating technologies to better understand what's going on currently in the market. We wanted to quantify success for different water heating measures and technologies. And we wanted to provide some recommendations for PAs to drive higher adoption of high efficiency water heaters. The task for this project included creating what we called a water heating technology table, which would inform our technology priority map. We did some subject matter expert interviews. We did data collection and analysis of CEDARS data. And then we summarized the trends from that data analysis. And then we're in the middle of a market potential analysis. And then, of course, we will have a final report. If you want to go to the next slide. So this slide just gives an update on each one of those tasks I mentioned. So we finished building out our water heating technology table. What we found is that the emerging technology is dominated by gas-fired heat pumps that are about 1 or more years from commercial availability. There is one unit that is commercially available, and there are a few that are expected to be available next year, but they are not yet, and those could be pushed out. But those heat pumps that are driving or that are the dominant things in the market are gas-fired internal combustion engine unit. So that's essentially the same DX refrigeration unit that you would see in a chiller, let's say, but it's fired by an internal combustion engine using natural gas. There's a gas-fired absorption units, gas-fired adsorption units, and then gas-fired thermal compression. So those are kind of the 4 that dominate the emerging technology. And then we also found that controls are very important in this space, and there's a lot of research and development work still being done. Controls, if you do not have proper controls on these technologies, then often they won't work right, and you'll have to resort to some backup system that is not as efficient. Our subject matter expert interviews were also completed. We mostly focused on what are the drivers and barriers for emerging technology or high efficiency adoption. So the highest drivers for the adoption are a lower production cost, independent verification of the performance, and environmental compliance with regulation. So that would be something like a AQMD regulation. The highest barriers were the cost of the technologies, which was not a surprise. The lack of awareness of these technologies by customers. Many times they know about electric heat pump water heaters, but they don't know about gas heat pump water heaters, for example. An adverse regulatory environment and uncertainty in how these water heaters will actually perform. The data collection analysis was also completed. What we did was we downloaded the statewide claims data from CEDARS for all of the years from 2017 to 2021. We looked at the service and domestic hot water heating and the recreational categories. Recreation would have pool heaters in it. And we mapped each one of these measures from CEDARS into kind of a generic measure description so that we could compare them across all 5 years. And then we just looked at the trends that we saw across years and with different measures. And then from there, we dove into different programs and in different sectors. So we looked at multifamily, residential, and commercial to kind of see what were the trends. So we finished summarizing those trends. One of the biggest trends we saw that our condensing tankless water heaters have seen a large increase in adoption over the last 5 years. And we have seen that in residential and commercial, especially in residential, single family, the tankless is just really skyrocketed, the adoption. The costs for those technologies are still higher even when the incentives are included with that. So that indicates to us that other factors besides just the cost are in play in the decision-making process. We also saw that there is an opportunity to increase adoption for high efficiency boilers and boiler controls. So that's something that we will probably be looking into going forward. And there's also some potential to increase the solar thermal water heating adoption. That was previously available under different programs, and now it's available in EE, has work papers. And so we want to see what we can do to increase the adoption in our EE programs. What we're currently working on is a market potential analysis. So we're going to be doing some analysis for the solar thermal water heating systems, multifamily boilers, high efficiency pool heaters, and boiler controls. And once that's done, then we'll present that to ICF, and then we should have our final report done by the end of this year, and it should be publicly available not long after that if you would like to look at all the work that we did there. So we can move on to the second one now. All right, thank you. So our second project was focused more on emerging water heating technologies. We wanted to see what was out there and what stage of development each one of those technologies were in, and then we wanted to go through and prioritize them. We also kicked this project off in May and also expect that to be done by the end of the year as well. The outcomes for this one were an inventory of the emerging water heating technologies and what stage of research and development they were in. We wanted to identify high priority technologies and then determine the gaps that exist and the barriers to get them into EE programs. So example of a gap would be if we don't have something we need to calculate the energy savings in a work paper would be a gap. And finally, we wanted to come up with some recommendations for further study of these ET water heaters. The tasks for this project were updating that water heating technology table with a prioritization of all of those technologies. And then from the high priority technologies, we did a little bit of a deeper dive on codes and standards that applied, impacts to DAC and HTR, and impacts on zero net energy. We then also did some subject matter expert interviews for these technologies. We did high-level calculation of energy savings for each of the high priority technologies. And what we're currently working on is a TRC, TSB analysis on each of those technologies. And then once we're done with that, we will do our final report. So if you can go to the next slide. All right, so we completed our prioritization on our water heating technology table. What we found is that the AQMD requirements are very impactful to ET for water heating technologies. South Coast AQMD specifically leads the other AQMDs. So if they adopt something, there's about 6 or 7 AQMDs that will generally adopt those same regulations. And those 6 or 7 AQMDs make up most of the population of California. And when they have ultra low NOx requirements, that will affect the things that we can offer in our ET programs. So one thing we found was an ET project, it was a single family sized water heater, and it had the ability to have higher efficiency because it had a, I forget what it's called. Oh, it's called a non-powered damper. So it's a damper that doesn't require an extra electric motor to work it. And we thought that was going to be a really promising technology. And then we found out from that manufacturer that it doesn't meet the AQMD's ultra low NOx requirements. And so it can't be sold in the most populous areas of California. So that one is something we decided not to prioritize. So going forward, we do have to be cognizant of what the AQMD requirements are for water heating and for space heating and other things. We also found that the codes and the standards are not well aligned to gas-fired absorption water heaters. Title 24 does talk about internal combustion fired gas fired water heaters, but they don't really talk about absorption or adsorption. And we found that in the federal standards as well. It was a little bit hard to kind of figure out what applied and where. So there's some need for some codes and standards alignment as well in these new water heating technologies. We completed our subject matter expert interviews. We found pretty much the same things that I've already said from the previous projects. So the highest drivers for adoption are the lower production costs, independent verification, and environmental compliance. And the highest barriers are the technology cost, a lack of awareness, an adverse regulatory environment, and uncertainty about the performance. We finished prioritizing our high priority technologies. And so those ones are an absorption heat pump water heater, and it can operate as a water heater only, or it could be a combi system, which just means that it can do domestic hot water as well as service hot water. That would be in a commercial setting. There's this internal combustion engine heat pump water heater and combi system in commercial. There is an adsorption heat pump water heater it's supposed to be a drop-in replacement in a residential setting. And then there's a thermal compression heat pump combination system that works in residential and commercial settings. So for each of these technologies that I mentioned here, we did a high-level energy savings calculation. What we did was we followed the DEER water heater calculator methodology, and we made some changes as needed. That water heater calculator does not support a gas-fired heat pump. So we followed the same methodology, but we had to make some changes. When we were doing combination water heating calculations, which means that it would be providing domestic hot water as well as service hot water for heating, we used a combination of loads from the DEER water heater calculator and the DEER prototype models that you would get out of MOS Control. And then we use the best available data on the COP as a function of outside air temp. This does have some limitations because the COP is also a function of the delivered water temperature, but the best available data we had was the COP as a function of outside air temp. The gaps that we found are that there's no modeling software currently that has the ability to model a gas-fired heat pump water heater. So this calc that was done was in Excel. The DEER prototype models do not include domestic hot water loads. And so if we want to model those in work papers eventually, we are going to need to figure out how to have a domestic hot water and a service hot water in the same model or tool. I already mentioned the water heater calculator would need some revisions to accommodate a gas-fired heat pump water heater. We need more performance data on all of the technologies listed above. We need some more installation configuration data on all technologies. As we get more into this, we find out that there's different installation configurations where they can work with or without existing boilers or new boilers or water heaters. And then we need more cost data on all of these technologies so that we can write some good measure packages and know what costs the customers are really going to be spending on these things. Currently, we're working on our market potential analysis, and we will be done with that soon, and then we will begin working on our final report. And that is it for those two projects. Thank you.
So the third project, Paul, if you can move the slide, is related to commercial food service. So if Sabrish, you want to go through this one?
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. So this is a project on the commercial food service side. And the reason why we picked commercial food service as the third project in our series is because when we reviewed the potential and goal study that's published by CPUC, we found out that this sector, the commercial food sector, provides the third largest potential in terms of therm savings. And the idea behind the study is very similar to what Crystal described right now, that the approach that we used for water heating technology, water heating market characterization. We are using those same principles in this commercial food service technology characterization study. As with any research plan, we are looking at figuring out what is the current market, how does it look like in terms of barriers that exist in terms of adoption, what are the literature that's available out there that describes the barriers to adoption. The second is looking at what has been the historical adoption rate of technologies that are available. And within that historical data, are there any trends that we can look at to figure out are there certain technologies that are being adopted by the market versus others? And finally, using that same data, we have to look at the installation data. We are looking at any types of TRC, that's the cost effectiveness test, any type of system benefit analysis that can be done, any type of cost data. I mean, these are all being driven so that we can get a good understanding of, again, what are the barriers in the market, what needs to be done to drive the increased adoption of energy efficient food service equipment within this market. So as seen on this slide, we kicked off this study in May, and we expect the final report to be available sometime at the end of the year. There were some very interesting data that came out of all the 3 studies, and it was not very surprising. But then what we found out that there are significant barriers to adoption of these energy efficiency technology, and customer education seems to be the single largest barrier to adoption. And what that means is that there seems to be a certain notion within this customer base that energy efficiency means that there is less performance that you can expect from energy efficient equipment. And more studies that we are looking at is pointing to the exact opposite, where the studies after studies are looking at the performance of griddles, for example, and then the flexibility of operation for griddles, for example, and all those studies are indicating to the fact that energy efficiency in food service equipment does not mean compromised performance of that equipment. So this is something that this message needs to go out to the customer base. And in addition to reviewing the existing studies, we are also planning to conduct customer interviews. And the idea behind customer interviews is to look at these different customers that have installed and are operating energy efficient equipment, and to figure out from their perspective what barriers they observe in the market, what barriers they observe in being able to adopt these equipment and being able to integrate that into their regular operations. The next step after we have identified those barriers is shortlisting equipment that needs further study. And as a part of that, we have identified 3 technologies, which I'll go into in the next slide. And from there, we'll figure out. Thank you. So from there we'll figure out what are the cost effectiveness parameters, what are the barriers that we need to overcome, what technologies need additional study, do we need to do any type of performance testing, so on and so forth. But performance testing itself is not part of the plan, but then the recommendations from the study will determine next steps for those equipment. So as I said, market barrier study, again, that is one of the biggest barriers that we have seen is that the pandemic has really driven the market in a totally different direction. We are seeing emergence of commissary type kitchens where consolidation of kitchen operation between multiple restaurants is happening. So we need to figure out how that plays into the energy efficiency market. There is a lot of issues on the supply chain side where customers are not getting access to energy efficient commercial food service equipment. And the other thing is that most manufacturers concentrate their efforts to market energy efficient equipments on large chains. But when you look at the market in California, I mean, we looked at one study and it said that almost more than 60% of the market is the independent market, where it's mom and pop type shops. On the measure selection, we have identified 4 different technologies. There are this griddle, underfired broilers, conveyor broilers, and steam tables. We looked at existing installation data from that is publicly available through CEDARS. And from there, we figured out what are the most underutilized technologies. And also looked at what are the cost effectiveness of these technologies. And that's how we shortlisted these 4 technologies. And we will be concentrating on these technologies for estimating market potential, talking to subject matter experts, and also customer interviews. On the market potential side, there is not a whole lot of data available, so we relied on multiple databases, including the commercial end use survey data that was available, that is made available by the Public Utility Commission. And also we looked at national databases to figure out what are the saturation rates of these equipments. So what we are trying to figure out there is that, for example, in the case of griddle, how many griddles are installed in California and operating in California, right? So from that data, then we are able to figure out a market penetration, which in this case we have assumed to be 5%. So we are assuming that 5% of the total number of griddles installed in California can be upgraded to the more energy efficient type. Finally, we did subject matter expert interviews. We were able to talk to about 12 experts in this area. And again, as I described earlier, the biggest barrier that we are figuring out is customer education, right? So in terms of improved performance of energy efficiency equipment, making them understand that the energy efficiency equipment in this sector can actually lead to labor savings. And then that there is an increased capacity that's available with energy efficient equipment. Costs and supply chain issues and lack of customer awareness dominate the barrier side, which is understandable. And then one manufacturer, they noted that, hey, because of all the emerging codes and standards in terms of gas-fired equipment, they have stopped investing, or they are very reluctant in investing energy efficiency type of research and development on their equipment. The final 2 steps here is, one is customer interviews, where we are trying to reach out to customers that have installed energy efficiency commercial food service equipment, and to get their input on what has worked for them, what has not worked for them, what additional support they require. Again, this is data that we require to inform the market as to what needs to be done to increase the adoption rate of energy efficiency equipment within CFS, commercial food service. So unless that step is completed, we are hoping that it will be completed by end of this quarter. But then if it is not, then we'll have to, the final report will also be delayed, because this is a very important data point for us to understand how energy efficient equipment in the market has been is being viewed and how it is being used by these different customers to drive the market.
All right. So we'll go to the 4th project. So this is related to boiler energy efficiency measures. So Saurabh, you want to take it away?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Stephen. So let us move on to the updates for project number 4. We kicked off this boiler energy efficiency measure assessment study in August. The boiler systems are used to produce steam or hot water, which is used for several primary purposes, including heating, domestic hot water uses, pool heating, etc. So this project will overview the currently implemented energy saving measures as well as emerging technologies for natural gas boilers in California, IOU territory. In the first step, we focused on getting the boiler count in the state and categorize the boilers into different sectors such as commercial, multifamily, and industrial. The industrial boilers category would include the boilers which are installed in industries such as manufacturing, food, paper, and chemicals, whereas the commercial boilers are used in hotels, restaurants, and stores. So, we are also planning to include additional categories such as institutional boilers, which include the boilers installed in medical centers, universities, and schools. This this study focuses on the boiler add-on measures and not on the entire boiler retrofits. So some of the measures that we are planning to include are condensing economizer, improvising burner controls, as well as some other technologies in emission reduction. We are planning to formulate the target list of all the measures by conducting customer as well as vendor surveys. And as discussed, we kicked off this project in early August, and you can see it has been spanned into 7 milestones, and we are planning to release the final report around May next year. The research will also identify which measures have potential to be developed as statewide deemed or hybrid custom measure. And in the process, we are also planning to evaluate the cost effectiveness, market barriers, as well as potential code impacts for the selected measures. As a part of challenge or risk, we anticipate that customer outreach and participation would be one of the biggest challenges in this project. And yeah, this project is in the earliest stages compared to the first 3 that we discussed. But yeah, this was all about the updates for the project number 4. Thank you.
All right, and not least is our 5th project related to hydrogen labeling. So Anushka, if you'd like to take this one.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So hi again for everyone who joined a bit later. My name is Anushka Cholakath, and I will be talking a little bit more about the 5th project in the GET program, which is the hydrogen readiness labeling for gas appliances. So this project will explore sort of the feasibility and approach to develop a framework for labeling, for a labeling process here in California and potentially the rest of the United States in order to label gas appliances for use with hydrogen blends. And right now, there are really no means for customers to understand the implication of the gas transformation. So labeling would really allow consumers to make educated decisions about the appliances they are purchasing as hydrogen blends start to become increasingly available in the coming years. So in terms of the project tasks and timeline, this project is also relatively new, and we kicked off in August. A literature review was recently completed, which focused on investigating the UK model for labeling hydrogen-ready appliances, which was released by the Hot Water and Heating Council, which is a UK trade group. In short, what this literature review found was that the UK had proposed sort of 3 different labels for gas appliances. The first being a hydrogen blend label, which will go on any appliance that can tolerate between a 0 to 20% blend of hydrogen. The next label that they proposed is a hydrogen ready label, which refers to any appliance that you would consider out of the box able to tolerate up to a 20% blend, but can be retrofitted in some way to tolerate higher percentages of hydrogen as they do become more available. And the final label that the UK proposed is 100% hydrogen appliance label. So for this project, we are currently in the middle of interviewing subject matter experts and trying to collect feedback about how appliances in the United States are performing with respect to different hydrogen blends, as well as interviewing experts in labeling entities like the FTC, trade groups, and other government organizations that can help us piece together this roadmap. So we hope to wrap up interviews in October and develop the first draft of this roadmap in November, and then send it back to various stakeholders in order to elicit feedback and considerations. And the goal is to have a final report completed early in the next calendar year. And now I'll pass it back to either Paul or Stephen to talk a little bit more about the next outreach event or Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, actually,
So-
yeah, thanks, Anushka. Oh, Stephen, did you have something to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, thanks to the presenters on the individual projects, and for those of you on the call, this is the projects that we've got started. We are scoping a number of other projects that we hope to present in the future.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for listening there. I'd like to open it now up for some Q&A. So if you want to come off of mute and ask a question, or type one in the chat, any questions on any of the projects that we discussed here today. Let's have a little bit of an open dialogue right now. Okay, we have a hand up from Orly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to say, first of all, I think the chat is muted. I wasn't able to type in questions as you were going through.
Okay, let me figure out how to do that while you ask your question verbally.
And I'll ask my question. So I come from the world of energy efficiency. We work with SCE, we work with PG&E. And I'm wondering, if you were talking about controls, if you think there'll be an interest for a project, especially for PG&E, that combines gas and electricity, since we're actually just started working with them, explaining that we could do some of the gas portion as well. So do you think there'll be a interest in that combination type of energy efficiency implementation?
We might want to address this sort of as you deal with it on a statewide basis, not just PG&E. But for instance, there is a parallel program, the CalNext program, which is focused on electrical energy efficiency. And we are looking at ways to do projects in parallel where it makes sense, where there are combined gas and electric energy efficiency savings. So I think the answer is yes, and we're working on the process to do so.
I'd be very happy to be part of even just the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have the chat function working now, I believe. It seems like there's some chat going on. So if you do have anything that you want to type into the chat and ask your question, otherwise, just ask it verbally. I'm going to try and keep up with the chats. So Marco asked if the recording will be available. I will say that with the caveat that I have to figure out how to do that. So we'll make it available, whether we can send that out or post it to our website. Some form of it we'll make available to everybody. But yes, so I guess the short answer is yes to that. Oh, and Anushka, she answered the question as well. So Garth asks, can you share more about the processes listed in select future projects? So we do have a website, and I realize in this slide deck, I don't think we have the website on here, but there is an intake process to that. I don't know if somebody can go into, like Stephen or somebody, if you can maybe drop the link into the chat, it'd be helpful. I don't know that I can navigate to the web and grab that while I'm on the slide deck here. But there is a website that we have for the program, that there is an intake process that you can go into, and you can answer a few questions in that. And I see Anushka put the website here in the chat, and we'll make that available. I'll actually update this slide deck with the website on this as well. So when we send out the slide deck, that website, there will be a link to that in the deck here, and you can just navigate to that, and there's an intake section of that website, and you can submit stuff through there.
Okay, so sorry, this is Garth. Just to clarify, because I'm kind of more familiar with the electric side and how they're taking sort of project and ideas, and it looks like for the gas ET, it's really what do you call it, a project? Or is it an idea that you're soliciting?
Yeah, it's like an
Is
idea,
there really
idea
only one pathway?
solicitation. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then the implementation would be done by the team on the call.
That's correct. Yes. We had, as I mentioned at the very beginning, there's a kind of the scanning, screening, and prioritization process. So it would go through that process, and there may be back and forth between us and the submitter of an idea as we go through that, and then as that gets scored and evaluated, then we know if it moves on to the next stage in terms of an actual project.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
This is Eric Kirchhoff from SoCalGas. I just want to caution that when submitting ideas, in both cases, whether it's to the statewide electric or the gas, we do try to have a standard approach on both sides, because in the past, some of the submissions and stuff, there was some claims of ownerships of ideas. And so we do try to follow some of the lessons that we've learned in the past regarding that. So feel free to go ahead and submit your ideas as you see fit. Just recognize that we do try to keep it consistent between both fuels, because we are regulated by the same entity, who is ultimately the one who is running the whole program. And so we have to try to keep that consistent.
Yeah, thanks, Eric.
There's a chat from Mary Sweeney.
Do you want to take that one, Stephen, or?
Okay, so yeah, I can address it. So we've got, it's structurally, we are looking at the whole group of TPMs for a variety of things. And they will be getting updated again next year. So it's actually in our end of it, it's actually a table of multiple technologies. And so those were updated earlier this year. As far as the tags involvement, so I think the plan is, and this will present, I think it's on another slide, is for next month or in November, we're going to have the tag involved, and any others for that matter, in the research plan. So the research plan will give guidance to the tag, but I don't know if the tag is explicitly part of the TPM process. Did that address your questions?
This is Mary. Yeah, thank you. That was helpful. I am kind of, it might be just a case of I'm not able to visualize the kind of table with multiple technologies you're referring to on the TPM update, but I was just curious if there was a particular focus there, but if it was just sort of a broad, high-level update on the different subject areas of each of the TPMs, is that what you're sort of referring to when you say of this sort of table of multiple technologies?
Yeah, and in essence, we were talking about water heating technologies. Those three of the, well, two of the projects specifically. So we've actually probably got, I'll just say, a dozen rows related to hot water heating, some of which reflect the technologies we discussed today, some of which reflect things that are coming in the future, and some of them reflect other aspects of hot water heating, piping design or whatnot. So we're obviously focusing on those things that are reflected in the research plan, but trying to make sure that the list as a whole, or the database as a whole, is getting updated and is timely.
Got it. Thank you. And then, pardon me. And then, do the funding IOUs have access to kind of those tables? I apologize. I just joined SDG&E within the last few months, so maybe there's some resources I'm not familiar with. But are we able to kind of access and see those updates as you have developed them?
I'll defer to Paul because I know that our website's still in evolution, so I'm not sure what's posted. I know we've discussed posting this.
And I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that question more because I was responding to another chat. So
No problem, Paul. So Mary Sweeney with SDG&E. I just joined SDG&E a few months ago, and so I'm still kind of coming up to speed on the documentation. I was curious if the updates, for example, to the sort of technology TPM related table that Stephen mentioned, if those are available for the funding IOUs to view either through the website or if that's sort of an email distribution to see those the latest updates to those documents.
yeah, I don't think we have the TPM is not on the website just because, quite honestly, we've not figured out a good way to present that because, as Stephen mentioned, it's I mean, it's kind of a lengthy spreadsheet essentially. And I'll talk to Eric offline about distributing that through to the IOUs, through email or something. That may be fine. I think it would be. But I'll talk to him offline about that, and we'll get those to you.
Right. Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions that anybody wants to ask about any of the projects?
This is Orly again. I wanted to know, are you looking for an IOU and like a collaboration? Would that be, or is that something that you guys will put together? So we present the idea and then you respond with, this is the IOU that maybe you would want to work with, or it doesn't matter?
Well, so this program is on behalf of all the IOUs, all the gas utilities. So it's funded by SoCalGas, but or administered by SoCalGas, but funded by all the utilities. So anything that we do is essentially, I guess, maybe I don't know if it's the right word, but in collaboration with the IOUs. And I don't know if Eric, if you have any more to add to that, but I mean, there is oversight by the IOUs on everything that we're doing related to the program.
Yeah, no, that's correct. I mean, technically, you would be working with one of the two assigned third-party implementers, ICF being for the gas and Energy Solutions being for the electric side. As he mentioned, there are single utilities. Southern California Edison is doing the program administration for the electric, while SoCalGas is doing the program administration for the gas portion. The utilities for emerging technologies, if what you're trying to do is trying to share some information or get some ideas out, I mean, I'm sure all of us would be willing to receive them. I think the most effective way would probably be to work with the implementers. But I certainly will not hang up on a phone call if someone were to call me and want to discuss ideas. And I doubt that Edwin Hornquist, my counterpart over at Edison, would probably be willing to take a phone call too. What I think Paul is cautioning on is that if you go to, and honestly, San Diego Gas and Electric is on the line here. I don't see if PG&E is on here. They very well may be. They still have an interest, but no one has money to implement any kind of what we call local programs anymore in the emerging technologies field. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, how about a SoCalGas does this emerging technology pilot? I'm going to hand it over, more than likely over to ICF and talk to them about, I certainly perhaps have a little bit more lobbying power than other people do with ICF, just because of the nature of our relationship, and we work, we're in contact frequently. And so if a good idea comes to me, I'll discuss it with them. But certainly I can't promise any money for it. Also, to some degree, every utility does have its own monies for local programs as well. Sometimes people do come to me with what they might think is an emerging technology program because it's new to them. But when I hear it, it turns out that it is not necessarily an emerging technology. And so I can actually direct that over to our engineering group or some of the other programs that we have, or I should say, processes that we have to try and see if there's a way we can integrate them into our program fold a little earlier. And every utility will likely have that capability as well. If you want, if that doesn't, I mean, well, first of all, does that answer your question? And if not, I can have Katie maybe talk about San Diego as well.
I mean, yeah, I think it addresses the question. So it sounds like this is more the gas side of it. I mean, and the EE electric world, it's more established and there's a clearer path. But it seems like in the gas, we're still working on putting all that together.
I would disagree with that.
Okay, okay, good. I'm glad.
The emerging technologies is the same thing over on both sides of the house, whether gas or electric. When you're talking about energy efficiency, that's a different program. And all the utilities have their own energy efficiency programs. So that's why I was talking about sometimes people come and have a question or a proposed idea thinking that it might be an emerging technology because they just heard about it. But in reality, it's a more mature measure or technology that they're talking about. And at that point, I go ahead and I hand it over to right into our energy efficiency programs.
Okay, I understand. I came in, like you said, confused between the EE and the ET part. Thank you.
No problem. In fact, it's good that you learn about it. It's a very interesting part of the field. I think it's kind of exciting myself because, I mean, that's why I'm working in it. Not many chances do you have in this world of energy efficiency where you can try and help a budding technology get into the real world, and that's our real objective, is to try and not only ferret out sort of, you know, the wheat from the chaff, but to try and help those that need to, that would really contribute to the energy efficiencies and the you know, the positive system influences that it can have for California, but just don't have the money or are lacking in some way. Maybe they don't have the institutional understanding of how all this works. That's our job, is to try and help them to be able to participate.
Got it. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right.
Are there any other final questions?
Mark has raised his hand.
Oh.
Yes, thank you very much. Mark Esser here with Negawatt Consulting. We used to be an EM&V provider for SoCalGas, where we would do, you know, in-field evaluations of new technologies, do all the calculations of before and after, write reports and such. And I joined the meeting a little bit late, so I apologize if this has been covered earlier. I was wondering if there will be opportunities for companies like ours, you know, to apply to participate in upcoming projects like we used to in the past, but then as a subcontractor to you, I suppose, or your partners instead of SoCalGas.
Yeah, I would say, you know, Mark, if you want to get in touch with me, Paul Kylo, my email is on the very last slide of this deck. Like I said, I'll submit this out after the meeting. But if you want to reach out to me directly, I mean, I guess it depends on, you know, our need. We have it as one of the early slides. I presented the team, so we have a team in place that's doing a lot of the work here. But, you know, that doesn't mean that there isn't some future activity that we need some additional support on, or something that maybe we don't have expertise on in the current team. So definitely would take your name and you know, keep that off to the side. And
great. Yeah, thanks so much. I'll reach out to you. That's great. We have a portfolio of, you know, 10 years worth of ET projects for SoCalGas, SDG&E, SoCal Edison as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to talk to you about
your
background.
to some
Yeah.
things. Okay, great.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
And I guess that, you know, that same goes for anybody, not just Mark. If there's any other person on the phone that wants to reach out to me about, you know, expertise that you bring to the table that we may or may not be able to use in the future. Appreciate talking.
Okay.
Any other questions? And again, if you can go on mute if you're not speaking, I'd appreciate it. There is some background noise.
This is Garth again. Just if I could ask a little clarifying question. So the website has pretty limited information, and there's a submission form. I guess I'm thinking more broadly, like, you know, you've got an objective of 32 projects over the course of the program. Do you need projects and ideas coming in? Is the pipeline pretty full? Where are you in the selection process? What is the best way to understand the objectives and criteria that you're looking for and so forth? Like, I guess some of the unspoken or unwritten stuff about that. So it's kind of to determine whether or not it's worth time to come and submit this type of project.
I could give you. You want me to give an outline of?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, so on the submission form, you'll see those things that we're actually asking about. And I think there's some pointers below as to exactly what you fill out. So that's sort of what we're looking at I'll say a project/idea level. As we presented earlier in the deck, and if you didn't see it when Paul sends it out, you'll get a view of it. But is our research plan. So that's those things we're currently focused on relative to this year. As I mentioned, we'll be updating it for next year, and there's an opportunity at that point. As far as projects in the queue, we've certainly got a number of them that are in development that we've had discussions with folks, and some of them are further along than others. With that said, we keep finding new things, and we've gotten input for a few things. So you're certainly welcome to submit new ideas, and we will, screen and decide where it lands relative to the other ones. Yeah, guess does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
I would have been in the
Say,
back,
Paul,
so.
do you mind if I post into chat? The one is the statewide emerging technologies program portal. It's the first year, so it is still a site under production. Yeah, but the idea is that we will be posting the results, and actually some of the stuff that you've seen here already today, I believe, is posted into this site. If you want to look up some of the projects, it's not much. It's just sort of outlining what we are doing. That's the first one that I just posted. It doesn't come up with a nice image though, but the second one I'm adding in here is actually an organization that has been around since like 2005, which is the Emerging Technologies Coordinating Council. This was a group that was first formed just to sort of coordinate between the 4 utilities, investor-owned utilities in California. It's expanded. We now have like LADWP, Sacramento Municipal Utility District, I believe, SMUD, and others. It's expanding. This also has some project reports in it. It also is featuring on its banner our upcoming virtual Emerging Technology Summit for this year. It's shortened, we call it ET Summit. And that's going to be this October 25th and 26th. So if, everyone here is invited to go ahead and register and call in for that event as well. So thank you, Paul.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with posting these into the chat here. As I think Eric mentioned, and both our program, the gas program, ET program, and the electric ET program, are really just getting started this year. We're collaborating now with the ET program on I would just call it a kind of a resource page that will have a bunch of these links. We're still trying to finalize what that looks like and everything, but we'll each be hosting that on our website. So no matter what website you go to, whether it be the electric or the gas, you can get to a bunch of these links like that Eric posted here. And there's more than just this, but there's other things that we'll be putting into that site. So because there are a lot of ET related activities in the state of California and ET related websites. So we just want to make sure everybody has access to all that information. So check back to the respective electric CalNext website or our gas website, and hopefully you'll see that information be posted relatively soon.
So will the etcc.ca.com phase out as the ETP new website takes over as a statewide repository?
No.
Mostly for reports, I'm talking.
Yeah, no, I think, well, for future reporting, yes. ETCC, and I'm not probably the best one to speak to that, Eric or somebody else can, but ETCC is kind of changing its mission in this kind of new era of third-party delivered ET programs. So the California-ETP.com website will be the future place where reports are posted, but ETCC will continue to move on and do what it does, and they have a number of activities that they're working on.
Yeah, they are an independent organization that sort of administers the collaboration efforts between the utilities. It is expanding to include the third-party implementers, in this case ICF and Energy Solutions, and yeah, they are looking to evolve as since this has changed, they're looking to evolve as well. So I don't expect that they will disappear. I am certainly there is supposed to be a movement of the projects over to the CA-ETP site. I don't think that there's let's see, Katie may have today's PowerPoint. Oh, okay. I don't think there's a desire for ETCC to continue maintaining that database, but I am not certain of that. And anyway, we still will do the collaboration and such, and that entity or that portion will still remain for a while. And Kate asked a question about the PowerPoints. So, Paul.
Yeah, so we'll post the information. We'll figure out how best to distribute it. There's only about 20 people on here. We might just send an email. I don't know how big this thing is, so it may be with all the graphics on there too big to just email. So we'll either post it. There was a kind of a side chat on the best location to post it, but we'll get that information out as to where we don't send it out directly, where it is posted, and we'll send the link out.
And Kate, forgive me, I referred to you as Katie earlier.
Conversation as may be required.
Okay, assuming there's no other questions, I'm going to, once again, I just want to thank you, everybody, for attending today. Just do want to point out the fact, Stephen mentioned this earlier when he was talking. We do have another event that we're scheduled for early November, and that is really to look into and get some input and feedback on kind of research efforts for 2023, and specifically putting together the research plan. We have a goal of every year to put forth a new research plan for the year, for the upcoming year. So we want to get some industry input and feedback into that research plan. The one that was developed for 2022 had some of that, but it was relatively limited. So we're going to be having that event to go through that and, like I say, get some stakeholder input into that. So the information or the meeting notice is posted on our website, the GAS ET website, and we'll send it out to a distribution list and the ETCC distribution list as well as we approach that meeting time. And whoops, I see there might be a discrepancy on the date. The website shows the 8th, but it says the 7th. So I will confirm that. It should be that. Well, I will confirm it and make sure the right date is, if this is updated or the website is updated, one of the two. Thanks for pointing that out. It's one of those two dates, but we'll double check on which one it is. And that answers Tim's question about the second event finalized. Yes, it is finalized for either the 7th or the 8th. I apologize for the discrepancy.
I believe it's the 7th.
Okay, so then the website might be incorrect, and we will change that.
Time is 9 to 11 Pacific time.
All right. Well, like I say, there's a few items that I need to, in terms of updating this with some websites, links, and a couple things. I'll put that into this deck, but we'll get this out to everybody in some way or the other, whether we send it or just give you a link to where it's posted. In the meantime, if you want to reach out to me directly, I'll leave this up for a second, but my email address is down here. You can shoot me a quick email, and we can continue the conversation that way. Otherwise, you know, the website is up there for any kind of ideation or intake of ideas. Feel free to submit anything through that, and we'll evaluate that and look at it, and hopefully have the opportunity to work with many people on this phone over the next couple of years. But with that, I would like to close today's event and look forward to anybody who is able to participate on the event coming up in November 7th. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, all ICF. Nice job, as well as their consultants.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.